I would like to say good morning and introduce myself. My name is Luis Valderrama, and I am the LA Program Coordinator here at FIU. I was a former LA in biochemistry for 8 semesters, and now I work with the LA program. And we have 5 volunteers from different disciplines here to talk about their experience and answer any questions you might have about what it's like to be in LA. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with them introducing themselves, so their name, their major, which courses they've LA'd for, and how many semesters. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Carla Valdivia. I'm a biology and psychology major here at FIU, and I LA for biology 1, and I've been in LA for about 4 semesters now.
Hi everyone, hi again. I was here yesterday if you don't remember me. I'm Ariana Bueno, I'm mechanical engineering and physics, and I've been LAing for 5 semesters for physics 1 and physics 2 modeling class.
Hi everyone, my name is Alberto Ziegler. I'm a biochemistry major, and I'm in LA for general chemistry 1, and this is actually my first semester LA.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Brito. I'm a philosophy and political science major, and I'm LAing for Introduction to Logic, and I've been doing this for 2 semesters.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Bird. I study nutrition science, and I'm an LA in the math lab that we have here at FIU, so I LA for college algebra, pre-calculus, and trigonometry.
Okay, so the first thing we're gonna ask them is to, 1, explain their whole LA experience in 1 word and why they choose that 1 word. Okay, so if you guys okay.
Alright, if I had to choose 1 word, I would choose the word enlightening, because I feel like by being in LA and by working with my peers, like fellow students, and helping them to learn their material, I have learned how the human brain works, and I've also learned how to work with a lot of different types of people, because in the math lab where we work, we've had students from ages 18 all the way to age 80, and you have to learn how to work with different types of people. So, enlightening.
So my 1 word is fulfilling, because every day I get to work with students, and not only that, but every day I also learn from helping students. Like she said, it's a learning process to help everybody with their own learning styles and stuff like that. And then not only do you help students learn, but you kind of become a mentor sometimes, because they ask you about, how to get through college or how to get through this course, and it's just very fulfilling.
So I would describe my LA experience so far as exciting. I think it's exciting because I get to help students directly. I get to be a bridge between the professor and the students. And I think my job entails more about motivation than it is like facilitating their learning, which motivation in and of itself helps facilitate their learning.
I think I'm going to pick another synonym for that, so probably rewarding as well. Sorry. I think it's a combination of what everyone has been saying, and I talked to you guys before yesterday, so it's a lot of benefits for yourself as well as helping others along the way. So I continue to do it. It's my fifth semester, and I hope to do it for my 6th semester because it's something I enjoy doing, and it's something that really helps me in the process while I'm doing it.
So my word is going to be challenging, and I feel like my LA experience has been challenging, not only because we constantly have to test ourselves with the material that we're helping the students learn, but also we have to find new ways to help them learn, and we're always encountering new personalities, and we have to learn how to communicate with them.
All right, thank you so much. Now what we're going to do is we're going to ask a couple of questions where 1 or 2 of you can just answer if you'd like. So the first question is, why did you apply to become an LA?
So, my honest answer for this question is that I applied to become an LA because I wanted a job that was convenient and on campus that had flexible hours. And that's what I got.
So So my answer is that I wanted to see if teaching was for me. I was kind of interested in education before, but I wasn't really sure how to approach it. I had done tutoring before, but being in LA has taught me a lot of things about education, and so far it's actually pushed me more towards education.
Okay. So how has being in LA affected you as a student? How has that impacted you as a student?
So I feel that being in LA has impacted me as a student by helping me learn to work with a team and be collaborative with others. And it also has helped me, I'm a pre-med student, so I'm studying for the MCAT, and in starting to study for the biology portion, I feel that all the material I've been covering over the semesters, and it's something that I'm very in tune with already.
Anyone?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, basically the same thing. I'm studying physics, so I'm a physics major and I teach it. So that's a really good way of like reviewing the material once you start getting to the more advanced classes, which always is like an advanced level of the basics. So always going over the basic helps you when you're getting to more advanced concepts, and definitely communicating those thoughts and like understanding complex ideas helps you really understand that you know your material and that you're able to communicate that. So when I do presentations, research, it's easier for me to kind of communicate with others what I'm trying to share, and not just something that's very difficult and I don't make any sense, if that makes sense. And there's something else I was gonna add. I can't remember. Okay, I'll go back. Thank you.
All right. The next question, what's the hardest thing about being in LA?
So I think one of the hardest parts about being in LA is motivating students to use their resources, because you can be in class and you can help them out as much as you possibly want, and you can put in all the effort, but sometimes students just aren't motivated in the subject or stuff like that. So that's one of the hardest parts about being.
So I think one of the most challenging things for me, at least, is finding ways of like asking students questions. I think every student learns differently, and my way of understanding, concepts in chemistry doesn't necessarily work for everyone else. So it's very much a learning experience for me, learning how to guide them through their own learning, because I don't want to give them the answer, but I try and facilitate their learning by asking them these questions that sort of lead them to their own understanding.
Okay. And then the last question is, how is the workload being in LA, and how do you manage it while being a student?
So how is the workload and how do you manage it? So I think, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I have to do 10 hours. That's always like the amount of time that you're supposed to do a week once you become an LA. So that includes your class that you're teaching, and then planning meetings and any extra like material that you need to do on your own time. So I definitely think it's something that works really well with your schedule. As long as you're already used to time managing, you can easily incorporate it with all the rest of the things that you have to do. And it always fits with your schedule, so you can move things around once you're picking classes. So that's also something that you need to look into. And yeah, I think that if anything, it's just planning. Sometimes you do tend not to make this the priority because your classes are the priority, but it's figuring out what to balance and what to prioritize and when you need to. I think that's pretty much it.
So I actually work 20 hours a week in the math lab, and what really works for me is communicating with my bosses and with my coworkers. If I'm feeling really stressed about my own workload in school, that way I can find cover, because as like in the math lab we work shifts, so I could get cover for my shift rather than overworking myself and feeling stressed, etc., etc. So definitely learning how to communicate with my bosses and with my coworkers as well to work around my schedule. And like she said, planning, because as we are students first and LA second, school always comes first.
Okay, so you all should have gotten a flyer or a worksheet, and what we're going to do now is we're going to take a few minutes and individually try to come up with some questions that you have for our LAs. So while you guys do that, we're going to go in and pass around sticky notes, but just make sure you write some questions that you have for the LAs, and then I can ask them later on. So let's work on that. of them, but I'm just gonna shuffle them and then we'll see which questions are picked, okay? All right, so you have the mic.
Oh. You can shuffle Post-it notes. I'm gonna be really impressed.
Well, I'll try my best.
I know he is.
Okay, so the first question, if there is something you could change about the LA program, what would it be?
Okay. I'm ready. No, so I was actually talking about this before this huge conference and kind of just discussing. I wouldn't say it's things what was it, change? Okay, yeah, I would say improvements, if a better word for it. Change. We do have planning meetings now, but I feel like lately it's been like students don't go the whole time or they don't finish doing the actual worksheets and problems. And me returning LA, it was scheduled around if I'm not able to go to that meeting. So I haven't actually been going to the meetings, but I'd like to think that I'm already been prepared for 5 semesters. I know a little bit of what I'm doing. I review before the class and everything, but I don't go to the review meetings. But we've been talking about how it's really important to have a returning LA go to those planning meetings so that someone that already knows the material can be there for the new LAs to give them that justification that they need, because sometimes they'll do the problem and they're not as confident as they would like to be. So then they'll come to class and they're like, oh, we did it, but we didn't really finish it, or we're not sure that's the answer. And although with modeling we have many answers and a lot of different ways of approaching it, we do need our LAs to be confident about what they teach. So I think having a returning LA always in those type of meetings is very necessary so that we have someone to give them that confidence that, okay, this is the right direction that you're going in, continue, and then that way they can start going to class really, really prepared. I think that's the only improvement, is making sure we do have someone there to tell them that they're on the right path, and then that way they're confident once they get into those classrooms.
Okay. All right, the next question. How do you handle students who do not have prior knowledge to be able to learn new material?
Could you repeat the question?
How do you handle students who do not have the prior knowledge to be able to learn the new material?
It's a good math.
This is a good one.
This is what I struggle with.
That's a really good question.
Hello. Sorry. This is a great question, especially for math. And I was telling that table back there, so where I work in the math lab, they actually have access to an e-text. And if I approach someone and they really have no idea and it's week 8 and they want me to teach them the entire course, I can't really do that. So what I do is I say like, okay, have you been going to class? They say no. And you say, okay, well what I would suggest that you do is to go into the textbook. And they're like, Steph, like this is math, I can't read the textbook. Like, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, okay, but this is college. So I suggest that they go into the book and try to learn the material themselves. And if they still can't get it, then I would come back and help them through it little by little. But definitely encouraging them to use their resources first and try to learn it on their own, because like I tell them all the time, look, I'm not a professor, I'm a student like you. I'm not going to be able to teach you everything. I need you to do the work on your own, and then I can help you out after that.
Can I add to that? Just because, thank you. So again, my class is an active learning class. It's structured just like how you are now. So there's people in groups and while they're doing the problems. And I think that that's something really different compared to the math lab. Because if someone's falling behind, you'll see that they'll actually go to their peers as well. So even though we don't have the time to individually sit down and get them to catch up, and it's always a problem with math coming into physics, they'll struggle with the math, and then we'll kind of give them different alternatives to not use math, maybe use more visuals, graphics, something that will help them get ahead without having to go back and to do all the math again. And then sometimes they'll talk to their peers, well most of the times they'll talk to their peers, and during the time that they're working on problems, you'll see that the peers themselves will help each other. And then we can go around and help, but most of the time they'll kind of catch each other up. So that's something I really, really like about active learning, because not all the work is on us, they help each other out as well. So it's something that I really like.
Okay. What is the scariest moment of being in LA?
Yeah. Fresh.
Especially as
Hold
a
on.
Sorry, I turned it off.
especially as a new LA, I think. Getting asked questions that I don't necessarily know the answer to. But most of the time, I think at the end of it, it gives me a better understanding of the material itself. I kind of work with students. I feel like it's kind of like, I'm not necessarily doing my job, but I think I am, because I kind of put more of the weight on the students rather than myself, because I'm not there to teach them. I'm there to help facilitate their learning. So I put more of it on the students, and as they work through it, I try and ask them why they're doing it, and if they can back up what they're doing with reasoning, they can keep moving forward. And it's more about like motivating them to keep, trying to bust their head against a difficult problem. And even if I don't necessarily know the answer to that problem, I think it's a better a better approach for actually getting a good conceptual understanding of the problem itself.
Okay. Do you have office hours, and if so, what do you think about them? What has been more efficient?
No, I don't have office hours.
If you have office hours?
Do you have office hours, and if so, what do you think about them? Do you think they're efficient?
Okay, so yes, I do have office hours. They're about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and with my professor, we go over all of the worksheets and the interactive activities that the students do in the class, so that when we are in the class, we know exactly what concepts and what points we do need to get across to them, and what the professor actually wants them to learn out of what they're doing.
Okay.
Oh, okay. You can go first.
So I don't have office hours, but I think it's an important note to make that LAs, for whatever reason, they're LAs, they get attached to their students, and they want to do more for the students, because, like, at least for me, I'm in charge of 27 students, and I genuinely care about their progress. Like, I joined the LA program because I wanted to impart like the same passion and interest for science as that I have, and give it to other students. So at least for me, I try and go out of my way a few times. Like I'll do review sessions before an exam to talk to students. I give out my email to them, and if they have any questions, they can approach me. Like I actually have a review session that I'm doing after this for 3 hours for an upcoming exam they have. But you can't ask your LAs to do that. That's something that they're just going to have to do on their own if they want to. But I don't think office hours are necessarily needed, but LAs might even go out of their way to do this.
So I do have office hours, and I think they're actually very important, because sometimes during class you might not get to cover everything, or there might be questions that some students don't get to ask. So they'll come to my office hours, and that way we know the weak points of like, oh, maybe they didn't fully understand this subject, or maybe they need like a little bit more on this other subject. So actually, office hours are very useful, and they're very important to, advance in class.
Okay. How did you find out about LAs?
My sister actually also worked in math lab, so I found out through a family member. But I also had LAs in my own classrooms, like biology. I think that's it. But I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, I had one in my biology classroom, and I remember like seeing them. I was like, oh, I want to do that. And then my sister also worked in the math lab, so that's how I got the job. Yeah.
Okay. How might you or LAs generally improve?
So I feel that in meeting all of these people from these LAs from different disciplines, I feel that we can improve by learning from other LAs. I think it's really important that we take what they know and I can give them what I know, because I've learned a lot from them, and I feel like they have a lot of stuff to offer us, and because they're from different disciplines, they have a lot of different insight they can give.
Okay. And then, what do you need from your faculty member for you to be the best? What are some things you need from your faculty?
I think the most important thing that I get from faculty is the preparation material, so that obviously I know what's going on. The weekly planning meetings really, really help, because during those meetings, we go over what they're going to be doing for the next week. We also go over, if they're having a test, what material is going to be on the test, and any like hypothetical questions that we might be asked, more related to like logistical things, like, oh, when this assignment is due, et cetera, because students do come to us asking those questions, and it can be kind of frustrating for us if we don't know the answer because that hasn't been communicated with us. So I think definitely a lot of communication with the faculty really, really helps, and definitely those meetings that happen once a week.
Okay. What was the one thing you wish you had known before signing up to be an LA?
It's a weird question, I don't know. I didn't know what I signed up for until I got into it.
How much strain does it put on your work in other classes, being in LA?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a case-by-case situation, and it really depends on the type of student you are. I think that if you are good at time managing, this is something easy to take along with the rest of your classes. I mean, again, like I mentioned, prioritizing. I do know when I have to prioritize my classes. For example, the other day I had to make up an exam, so I came late to class, and I communicated with my teacher. I'll do those type of things, but I think it's definitely something you can handle.
I think it actually puts less strain on me because as a biology major, helping students learn biology, it helps me cover a lot of things that maybe I would have forgotten in the past, and then me taking these upper division courses, having a refresher on all that biology information that I'm using in more complex ways really does help me in my upper division courses.
Okay. How do you handle students that just want the answers to a problem without working on the problem?
That's a good one.
We get a lot of those. So when usually they ask me, they're straight up about it a lot of times. They're kind of like, what's the answer? I'm trying to go home. It's 6 o'clock. But with those kinds of students, as any student, even if it's a student that doesn't really know, like if they're starting from the bottom, usually we ask what they know first, and then we start from what they know, and we start with these very short questions that they can answer very like easy, like yes or no. Not yes or no questions, but like answers that questions that have like one-word answers, and then we kind of build up from what they know up to the higher complex questions that they would want us to tell them.
I don't necessarily think that sometimes they just want an easy way out. I feel like sometimes it has to do with maybe a fear of getting the question wrong, or a fear of not appearing intelligent in front of their classmates, or something of the like, or maybe they just didn't have enough time to study, and they hope that getting the answer will probably help them understand it better. So what I try and do is I try and like sit down with that student separately and understand what's going on with them personally. If they want to talk about that with me, but I try and be there for them in terms of like motivation and cooperation, just to kind of like help them along, and then move them away from asking for answers and more towards trying to get the answers themselves.
Okay. What is your next step after being in LA? What is your next step after being in LA?
Like career goals?
Yes.
I mean, career goals, right? Okay. I plan on getting my PhD in applied physics and then working in the industry. I'm very motivated by space. I plan to be an astronaut, and if I retire from being an astronaut, I want to be a professor.
Anyone else want to share?
So I'm not entirely sure what I want to do in the future. I used to be on track for medicine, and then I did research, and I kind of had an idea of doing education. So I've moved away from medicine and more into like research and education, but I'm also interested in political science, so I'm not necessarily sure, but I know at least after being in LA, like I want to get a PhD, not sure in what specifically yet, but I think that's generally the track that I want to go down.
I'm a senior, by the way. That's why I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
In what ways do you bond with other LAs towards building a community?
That's
I mean, I've made a lot of friends because of the LA program, and a lot of the people that actually became LAs were the students that I would LA for, so that's also a really nice community that you get to see the people that you taught turn into LAs, and then like generations, so I really like that.
Okay. How stronger are you from this LA experience personally versus your fellow students? So not academically, but personally.
I would say this job has made me a lot more outgoing, and I might have been a little bit more shy when I first started. I remember like my first day in the math lab, I was kind of nervous. What we do in the math lab is you kind of walk around and you try to see if anybody has a question, but I was kind of nervous to ask and even approach students if they're not raising their hand. Even if you can see like they might be a little bit like they don't know what they're doing, and you want to ask them like, oh, are you okay? But I was shy about that at first. But now I'm just like, I walk up to them and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I just try to get to know them and talk to them and see if they ask me a question. So it's made me a lot more outgoing. It's made me a lot better at communicating by communicating with my fellow LAs, with students and with faculty. So it's really, honestly, has really brought me out of my shell.
Okay. Do you work other jobs, and are you involved on campus in any positions or ways?
So yes, aside from the 10 hours a week that I do on campus as an LA, I'm a scribe at Baptist Urgent Cares, and I'm involved. I'm in a medical fraternity here on campus, and we do a lot of philanthropy for the Children's Miracle Network. And on top of that, I also do research here with the Center for Children and Families. So yes, really involved.
Okay. So what is the most important role for you in the class?
I think what comes up for me is two things. Definitely number one, being knowledgeable about the subject. And the second one would be being accessible and being understanding, not being condescending when people ask you questions, because someone might ask a question to us that we think is like silly. But for them, they just don't know, Sometimes if you don't know something, you have to ask. And so really coming to students with a positive outcome or like a positive mindset, and being accessible so that they feel comfortable asking questions.
And is there a topic you think should be covered in the LA seminar class that was not covered?
I don't know if I agree with myself right now.
I think definitely trying to maybe get someone to come in with experience about how to deal with students that are disrespectful or bad experiences. I think having someone that's been through that come to the class and share that might help us once we get put into that situation, because I definitely did not know what to do when that happened to me. So I think that that's something we can add.
What was the most important topic or thing you learned from the LA seminar class? And which one was the least important?
It's been a while for me, so I don't remember.
This would be a better question for me, but
You're taking it right now.
Yeah. So because it's
Sorry, I keep turning it off. My bad.
So because it's my first semester, I am taking the LA seminar course, but I think most important might be articles that we've been given on growth mindsets. I think are really enlightening, because we can try and by understanding what it is in the first place, we can kind of try and create questions or attitudes in our students that can kind of move them more towards a growth mindset where they believe that they can actually learn and improve themselves. One of the most interesting articles for me was on the nature of science, but that's more just interesting for me because by understanding something that should be widely known and at the core of science education, at least, that actually really isn't that well understood by or agreed upon by the educational community. I think it's interesting to try and tackle those questions. In terms of the least important, I think was part of the question. I'm not entirely sure. I think they all hold a lot of value. Like we've read through articles on privilege, which is extremely important because it's important to understand that students go through different things and they have different backgrounds to try and get through their these courses and learn. But we go from privilege and the actual pedagogy of being in LA, and I think it's all important, but maybe in varying degrees. I think the readings that are selected are extremely important, like all together.
So even though we didn't get through all the questions, some of them are actually going to stay for lunch, so if you guys want to come up to them, you can. But I thank you everyone for your questions, and if we can all thank the LAs for coming and answering.